Hi, and welcome to Cooking with Alligator Pear. I'm Whitney, and today we're going to be cooking a sushi style, i.e. Japanese style, baked salmon. So first I have a nice slab of salmon, a fillet of salmon. And the first thing we want to do is cut it into strips so that we can start our roll. So depending on how the grain and the pattern of the meat is, this one is kind of broken apart. So I'm going to try to slice it to where my pieces stay together. So first we will try, I think I'm going to turn it this way to see if I can get a nice long slice out of it where it doesn't break up. I want the slices to be fairly thin, but not paper thin. So if you can see the thickness here on the knife, that may be maybe 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to just go ahead and work my knife through and try to get a 1 inch or 1.5 inch section, a strip cut. And then I'll do it again in a second and try to get another piece. So we'll fold this over, and if you can see how I'm just kind of cutting a little bit to guide it through, and then once I've folded over, then I'll run my knife and just make sure it's completely separated. So we have a nice little strip here, which I will move to the side, and we'll do another one. And you can go maybe just this time I'm going to go a little bit wider with it. Just again, see how it's breaking up. So just be careful to kind of keep it together and maybe not rock when it starts to do that back and forth as much, but just kind of guide your knife through. I can actually feel the cutting board with the tip, so I believe I should be cutting all the way through, so I don't need to rock as much with this piece. Yeah, as you can see, I kind of completely separated this piece. It's just that beginning part that I started that I'll just need to come through and separate. And I'm going to continue to cut strips, and I think I like this one just a little bit bigger that way. I'm going to go again, it's separating, so I'm going to try not to rock back and forth, and I want to hold the knife on an angle so that I can get a bias cut on this so it's thin. Be careful with your hand as you slide your knife through. And again, I'm going to just rock just a little bit to push it through and then slide. And then I'm just going to fold it over this way to open it, see where it's still attached, run the tip of my knife, and I'm going to do this a few more times. You can watch this one a few more times as I do it. You can see the angle that I have the knife, and then I'm just going to glide it through. The tip of the knife is dragging on the cutting board, and I'm just going to continue to slide my knife through the fish, pull it back to see how much is still connected. As long as I feel that tip gliding, I know that most of it is going to be separated, which is what we want, because we don't want to rock too much back and forth to separate the fillet and flake it, because fish will flake. That's what it does. That's a nice beautiful piece of fish when it flakes after it's cooked. So again, I'm going to run this through. I don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear it dragging on the cutting board, and then I'm going to separate it. And I think we have enough now to start rolling. So I'm going to go ahead and move this piece off to the side. Now we're going to make our crab salad that's going to be stuffed in our salmon rolls. First, we're going to start with some artificial crab meat. You can buy fresh crab meat, but right now the price of crab meat is extremely expensive. So we're going to do it the way they do it in sushi restaurants, and we're going to use artificial crab meat. This crab meat does state on the package that it is gluten-free. So it comes like this in chunks, and it's going to look like lump crab meat, like it came out of the claw, just like claw meat. So you can either pull it apart like this to shred it, which takes a lot of time. So what I like to do is just go ahead and run a knife through it, because once it gets mixed up, you will not know the difference. Just chop it up finely. So I just like to run my knife through it. I like to try to keep it in the, because there's actually, you can see the grain in it. So I like to stay with the grain when I'm cutting it just so I do get those long strips, but again, it's not that important. The most important part is that you do want to have it chopped fine like this. So let me go ahead and just give this a quick chop and add this. And as you can see, I'm trying to keep everything in that same direction so that I can have nice little somewhat uniform pieces. It's okay if it's not all the same size, they're different pieces, but I do like to try to keep it nice and uniform. Okay, so now what we'll do is add this to the ones that I've already chopped, and now we'll start actually making it a salad with the dressing. I'm gonna put this aside for a second. And what we're gonna do is, usually you'll use a Japanese mayonnaise called Kewpie. I don't have it, I thought I did. And what we're gonna do is improvise, which if you don't have it or you can't find it, you can still get the same flavors and still make this. So I'm gonna use some regular mayonnaise. I'm gonna do about a half a cup of mayonnaise in here. And then all we're gonna do is sweeten it up, because the Kewpie mayonnaise is a little sweet, a little tangy, and it's just really good flavor. So we're gonna add to this a little bit of rice wine vinegar. Gonna thin it, it's gonna help thin it out, but it's also gonna give that nice, this has a little bit of sweetness to it, that nice sweet sour flavor. I also like to add to mine a little bit of sesame oil. And instead of using like a white pepper, I'm going to keep it New Orleans and add a little bit of shrimp and crab oil. Now this stuff is very potent, so use with caution. You really only need a few drops of it, but it will give. So I don't know if you can see how much I'm actually putting in here. That is a lot. So I'm gonna add just like a few drops of it to give that a nice little kick. And it helps actually add the seafood flavor too. So now we're gonna just go ahead and mix this up. And it'll start to look kind of like a tuna salad, a chicken salad, crab salad. And if it still looks a little dry where it doesn't kind of hold together, you wanna add a little bit more mayo. It smells amazing. Ooh, making a mess. And then you can test it to see like if it sticks on the spoon. So see how this sticks on the spoon? And I'll try some over here just to make sure, but you want it to hold together because we're gonna stuff the salmon fillets with it that we just cooked. So this looks good. So now I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna bring in my salmon that we just cut, and then we're gonna start to roll and stuff the salmon fillets and make our baked salmon. And I'm also gonna pull out my pan that I'm gonna put them on. I'm gonna set this a little bit to the side so that once I get them rolled, I can sit them on a pan that's gonna go in the oven. So first we start, let's see, which side do I like? I like this side because it kind of tapers down. So that's why I flipped it, if you're wondering. The next thing I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of this and I'm gonna just go ahead and lay it along the whole length of this piece of salmon. It's a little messy. You can try doing this with kids. They probably would love to get all dirty in here, wrapping this up. So now I'm gonna press it down. Just make sure it sticks, because when we start to roll, it will get a little messy, but don't worry about that because it's easy to fix, and then the final outcome of it is actually nice. So that part don't worry about, just get it on there. Okay, so now we're gonna start rolling. So we're gonna take this in, and this is the more flatter side. This is the uneven top of the fish on this side. So we wanna make sure that this part stays even and flat as we roll. Don't worry if you lose a little bit of stuffing, just go ahead and stuff it back in. We're gonna lightly roll it. We don't want to push down, which will cause the stuffing to come out. the crab salad to come out. So I want to just make sure I keep this bottom part even and take this little tail and wrap it up. And then we will just kind of push it together like this. Take that, stuff that on top. We want to make sure we see all the little orange poking through. Don't worry if you have the white mayonnaise dressing showing, because that part of it, it's oil, so it's going to melt down, so we won't worry about that. Now I do want to take one of the thinner strips, so I'm going to take one, and this is how I kind of got that rose design on it. I'm going to take a thinner strip, and actually this might be thin enough. Let's see. Yeah, this piece may be thin enough. We're going to take one around the outside and then just kind of wrap it. Actually, I do want to cut this one. Let's cut it. So I'm going to cut it just a little bit thinner in width, and then also shorter in length, because I really just want to do a wrap around the outside, which will kind of just add an extra layer of, I'm going to tuck it in here where I kind of left off. It'll kind of give an extra layer of texture, and then wrap it around the back and tuck it in. And then if you can see that as it broils, you'll have like an extra layer here. And I'm going to take this and pick it up and put it on my tray. They don't look like much now, but once they start baking, they actually start to kind of come alive and look better. We'll do one more, and let's see. So I'll do one where it's kind of falling apart a little bit, just to kind of show you how to work with this, because fish, like I said, is flaky. It does kind of want to come apart. So what you want to do is lay it flat, press it down. Like I said, it's not the end of the world if it breaks apart. Press it down. Just make sure those holes are closed up. That's the most important part. Everything else we can fix and work with it. It's not that complicated, not that hard. So now I'm going to take some more of the salad. Go ahead and spread it in. I'd like to, if you want, just lay it down, and then we're going to press it down after we get it lined up. You don't want to go too thick with the crab salad, because it will fall out and make the rolling a little bit difficult. So we'll go ahead and press this down first and see, and then if we need to add more, we'll go ahead and add more. And then when you do roll, I do want to say that the tapered edge is what we want to be the last piece, and the more fatter, flatter edge is going to be the piece that we start the roll with, because as we roll it, we want it to kind of taper and get smaller, and that part will be on the outside, which will give that kind of rose effect. So, and each piece will be different, so it's not going to all work the same. Some pieces you may not need to add the extra piece. It just depends on what it looks like after you start rolling it. This looks like the top piece, so I'm going to kind of focus on this being my flat edge here as I start to roll. Just because this is a little bit more wavy, uneven, and you want the thicker piece to be the middle, and then as it gets thinner, to be wrapped around the outside. So you see how this is breaking up? Don't worry about that. Just kind of pick it up, guide it, guide it, guide it. And this is where you'll see where that extra piece will come in handy. Now, as we do this, you will see it's starting to break and fall apart. I'm gonna add these little pieces in, because the thing about salmon is as it bakes, it will cook together. So we just want to make sure we see those defined pieces like that, that give that rose effect. So I just want to, if I need to add a little bit more crab salad to hold that open, we do that, just so you get that little wind around rose. Now I'm going to take this other little piece, and this is when we use these little pieces to kind of just fill in, as you can see right here. this big hole. I'm gonna take this, wrap that in there. Then it comes around here, this big hole, wrap that around. And as this bakes, it should stick all together. I'm gonna lift this and I'm gonna put that right here on the tray. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and bake these at 350. I like my salmon to be medium rare, or yeah, medium, closer to medium than medium rare, but you bake it as long as you like it. So we're gonna start though on 350, and then we're going to, I say 15 minutes. We're gonna bake it for 15 minutes at 350, and we'll start there. And if we need to go ahead and cook it a little bit longer, we will. Okay, our salmon has been baking for 15 minutes, so we're gonna come in here and check it. Now what I can see is, or what I'm gonna be looking for, is that I want the color to start to become translucent. So as you can see here, it's starting to become translucent. It still looks like it needs to go a little bit longer, and I wanna get a little bit more color on it. So now what I'm gonna do is put it back in, and this time I'm gonna switch the oven to broil, which will continue to cook it, but now it'll start to put some color on the top. So I'm gonna switch it to broil, and I'm gonna start at about 8 minutes. If you're using a traditional oven, you wanna broil it on low, and maybe put it in the center rack of your oven and keep an eye on it. And then also same thing, if you're baking in a traditional oven, you wanna keep an eye on it, and cooking times are gonna be a little bit different. I'm using a countertop oven for convenience right now, I can keep an eye on it. So while that is broiling, what we're gonna move to now is making the sauce. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn on my pan, and I'm gonna do, typically it'll be a half a cup of soy sauce, a half a cup of Mirin wine or rice wine vinegar. I'm gonna use rice wine vinegar because I'm just gonna use what I have. And then you're gonna use a half a cup of sugar. But since we are gluten-free and low carb, what I'm gonna be using is a 1/4 of a cup of soy sauce. And the reason I'm gonna use a 1/4 of a cup is because I find that the soy sauce that is gluten-free is a little bit saltier than regular soy sauce. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. And then what I'm also gonna add to it is a 1/4 of a cup of water. And I'm gonna pour this in here just to get all of the soy sauce out. Go ahead and add that in. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep the half a cup of rice wine vinegar. So I'll go ahead and let's see, find my measurement. And I'm gonna do a half a cup of the rice wine vinegar. Actually, I'm gonna go, just because this feels like a lot, and you can always add. I'm gonna go ahead and do it at 3 ounces, which is about 18 teaspoons. So it's just shy, looks like it's just shy of a half a cup. And then I can always add a little bit more later. And then what I'm gonna do now is I'm using, instead of sugar, I'm using erythritol. And I'm gonna go ahead and add about 2 teaspoons of it. I'm gonna sprinkle that in. Like I said, you can always add more if you want it a little bit sweeter. But it's a little bit harder when you add too much to try to take it away. So that's what we're gonna start with, and we're gonna cook this down until it becomes syrupy. So I like to use the erythritol because it's like a granular, like regular sugar, and it will get thick like sugar. So we're just gonna stir it. Make sure that dissolves on the bottom. We don't want anything to burn. Get everything mixed good. And we're just gonna let this reduce down. We wanna bring it to a little bit of a boil, but not too hard because we don't want it to burn. Because once it starts to reduce, it will start to reduce fast and start bubbling and thicken. And you just want to keep it moving so it doesn't stick or burn. So let's see, I have this on 3, which is about like 50% heat. See, I can turn it up just a little bit more. I'm starting to see bubbles. So you can see it's starting to bubble. I don't know if you can see that. But it's starting to bubble up. And that's what we want. And we just want to keep an eye on it as it starts to reduce. I'm going to reduce it down until it coats the back of a spoon is what I would say. So I not necessarily would be half. But the more you reduce it down, the more intense the flavors will be, the saltier it will get, and the sweeter it will get. Now it's starting to come to a rolling boil, and just gonna let it boil for a second. Just let everything start to heat through. And then I'm gonna stir it again, because I want to make sure it doesn't burn. And just keep it moving. And I have here a whisk that is silicone, and this is a non-stick pan. And I'm just going to keep it moving. I'm kind of just dragging along the bottom just to make sure, and kind of scraping the sides with it just to make sure I don't get anything that's burning and sticking. But then I also now want to reduce it just a little bit, the heat, bring it down a little bit. And just keep reducing that until it starts to thicken, which it doesn't look like it's very thick just yet, so we'll probably take about 10-15 minutes for this to reduce down as well. Okay, our sauce is now reduced to probably, I would say, now it's about 1/4 of what we started with. I've turned the heat off, and I did have to add a few more tablespoons of the erythritol in it. As you can see here, it's starting to get a little thick and coat. We don't want it to be like maple syrup that thick, because it will continue to thicken as it cools off. But as you can see, it's coating the bottom of the pan quite nicely. And you want this, I tasted it a few times just to make sure I had the sweetness where I wanted it. You want it to be sweet, salty, and a little bit sour all at the same time. It's a perfect balance. That's what Asian food is. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out of the pan just so that it can continue to cool off. And as you can see how it coats the bottom of this pan, that's how you want it. You can see that. And now what I'm gonna do is just stir this a little bit just to continue getting it to cool off. Now as this cools off, we're gonna go ahead and get our salmon out of the oven, and we can get ready to plate these salmon. And I will show you the ugliest ones, when you roll them, end up being the prettier ones. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take my little pan out. Now, as you can see, this one, that's the one that I really went in and separated the fillet, the fish fillet, so that you can see, gives you that little rose winding effect. I went ahead and did a few more. These kind of start to fall apart a little bit. It's all good. Once you plate it with the sauce, it's going to be very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and get a plate. Oh, and don't worry about the little crispy bits on the top. The reason that happened is because these set up a little bit higher. So if you want to push those in, if you don't like those, you can push them in. But overall, it's not burnt. It's just those little crispy pieces at the top, which gives you a little crunch, little texture. I don't mind it at all. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and add it to a plate and add our sauce. So let's see, which one is the pretty one? So I'll go ahead and just go with this one. That's the closest. As you can see, it's nice and stays together now. You don't have to worry about it falling apart. I'll go ahead and move these out of the way, off to the side here. And now what we're gonna do, I'll move this a little closer. Our sauce is not completely cooled, but you would want it to be a little bit cooler. And we'll go ahead and just do a little drizzle, because I want it to thicken just a little bit, but we'll go ahead and do just a little tiny little drizzle on it and start to just let it kind of go in the little cracks. Drizzle down the side and really look nice. Can it go around the sides? Now this sauce is salty, so we just want to use it sparingly. You don't want to go too much. Like I said, you can always add, can't take it away. So we'll just swirl it around just a little bit to give a nice little puddle at the base of the plate. You can even take your spoon and kind of guide it which way you want it to go. Here, just to fill in those holes. And then I like to garnish with a little bit of sesame seeds, toasted sesame seeds. Ooh. All toasted sesame seeds. And I don't have fresh chives, and like I said, I just use what I have. So I have some dry chives, just to give a little bit of green, little pop of color. Just go up high and drop. And there you go. There is a gluten-free, low-carb, baked salmon, sushi style. Now we're gonna taste this. And I have my brother who's gonna come in and taste this. Okay, now it's time to give it a try. Tim, get over here, come give this a try.
Here we go.
Dig in and let me know what you think.
Oh my God, that was good.
Oh, I gotta give it a try too.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Sushi style baked salmon, gluten-free, low carb. Give it a try, let me know how you like it. All right, that's it for today. If there's any other recipes that you'd like to see me make, go ahead and leave a comment below. If not, I'll see you later, alligator.